Hello?
Hey, what's up, Mai? How are you?
Hi. Hi. Sorry. Couldn't figure out how it worked.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. How are you doing tonight?
Good, I'm good.
Good, good, good. Sorry, we may go in and out because of the just the internet, but it's all good. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome, awesome. So first of all, thank you so much for talking again. Yeah. And I really enjoy reading your lesson plan and your watching your video. They were both really excellent. So thank you so much for submitting that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I just said thank you so much for submitting it. It was really
Oh,
great to
yeah, of course. No problem. Thank you.
Cool, cool, cool. So basically, the purpose of the day is this is like the last step in our interview process, and so basically, I wanted to take some time to like just kind of collaborate with you on the lesson, and it really is like collaboration. It's like just kind of being thought partnership about like how at Camp Common Ground we would like let campers get the most out of this activity, which you have a really strong start to already, and then also to like allow you to ask any more questions that you have of me. Zach is representing us at an event tonight, so he won't be able to make it, but he's here in spirit. But he's doing awesome work on behalf of our camp. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's really great. So the first thing is, I want to know what were you trying to get your campers in this case or your students to accomplish in this lesson?
I think I wanted them to a couple things. Work together,
Mm-hmm.
which seems kind of obvious, but working together, communicating,
Mm-hmm.
a sense of kind of having a goal as a group,
Mm-hmm.
and then reaching that as a group. And so I kind of see this activity as having like two arcs, one
Mm-hmm.
of a personal arc where you get really like you start and you're fine and you're not really into it and you think it's going to be easy, and then you get really really frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
um, but you don't know why, and
Mm-hmm.
then you kind of meet your group, and then at the end you like feel accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like one small arc, and then I think there's the group arc, which is kind of that magnified. So people aren't really into it, and then they go into it and it's really difficult, and they want to give up. Um, and then there's kind of that breaking point where people really commit, and
Mm-hmm.
then start communicating and start kind of meeting and going back and forth, and that's kind of, and then it kind of comes down and there's like that celebration at the end. So I kind of see it as having two arcs, and that it's really about kind of finding a challenge, I think both within yourself but also in a larger group context, and then pushing through that challenge and then reflecting.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I think just based on your video, like it was funny because they did that activity several times, right? And I loved how after the first time you asked them, like I forgot the exact wording you used, but you asked them like, what happened, like why did this bomb, and they were basically came to the conclusion that they were not working collaboratively as well as they could have, and you really pushed that out of them. And then I also loved how that forced them to communicate, towards the middle they were like, no, you go down first and then you go, and I think you really hit the nail on the head with that, which was awesome.
Thank you.
I wanted to spend some time on the questions that you asked at the end, and really think about like, so at Camp Common Ground, we're definitely the two things you mentioned, getting kids to collaborate and to communicate across with each other is super important. And I almost see this lesson as a great like intro into like who am I as a leader, right?
Mhm.
Because I think you really pushed on that at the end where you asked asked the like, I think you asked the girls like, how does that make you feel, when people were like, you were kind of the leaders. And I think that's a really interesting, leadership is a big thing at camp. How would you bring that, how would you even take that discussion to the next level, like really getting kids to think about their own leadership style as a result of after doing that activity?
Oh, that's a good question. I think needing to kind of find You know, I think it would come, it would have to be kind of like a trying, like more than one activity,
Mm-hmm.
where, or a series, and so that they can start noticing maybe like a pattern, um,
Mm-hmm.
within their participation. So like a couple different activities that do have the same objective and maybe even with the same people, because I have a feeling if I was to do another challenge with them, like the flip tarp or, you know, a balancing activity, that they would be the leaders. And I feel like once people are kind of even unofficially or informally recognized as leaders, then they tend to step up and be leaders more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, getting them to have, first of all, like a stronger identity as, oh, I was the leader for this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then once they can see that pattern, to maybe look at what, you know, what two things. Well, one is like, what was that moment like when you decided to, you know, kind of that tipping point? Um, because I think that in a larger context, those are the moments when you decide to run for school board,
Mm-hmm.
or you stand up and say something in a meeting, or you take on a project, and kind of say, you know, well, I'll do it. Um, and so, you know, getting them to kind of like reflect on, how does that feel, like that moment?
Mm-hmm.
What are you feeling? Is it a good feeling? Is it uncomfortable? Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Do you feel really confident and empowered? Um, so I think some reflection on that, and then a bigger piece about what is leadership, and like what, you know, like kind of maybe getting more into the responsibilities of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is harder in a smaller activity like this. But I think that could be important, because I think even within that, you know, you saw that Susie, the girl with the long straight hair, looked really stressed
Mm-hmm.
at certain points. So I think also, working with them, you know, the ones that stand out as the leaders, to really think about, um, you know, what are some kind of like, what is leadership? What does it mean? What are we taking on?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also really want to work with the students um, who didn't necessarily get named as leaders. And I feel like that's less of a discussion thing and maybe more of like a quieter reflection, like a journaling activity,
Mm-hmm.
or like a one-on-one, like just talking to someone, but kind of talking about how it makes you feel if someone else is named the leader. Because I think that for some people, they feel incredibly relieved.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, they might be disappointed. Other people might be mad because they thought they were the leader. So getting also people who, um, didn't emerge as the obvious leader, to consider, what does leadership mean for them? Maybe you can come around and say, you know, well, not everyone can be leaders all the time. Or maybe you can say, I feel like I was a leader in the sense that I recognized that we needed a leader, and was willing to kind of submit to, someone else's leadership. So kind of thinking about it more as a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that that it's not something where it's like, okay, well, you're not the leader, so, you know, we're not gonna pay attention to you. But kind of recognizing that there's like a grace in following as well. And I think that there's power in seeing a leader and recognizing that leader, and being able to support them.
Yeah, no, I really like how you like what it sounds like to me is um a few things I heard is, first of all, like this being like kind of the beginning of several activities that they would do where they can begin to notice a pattern in their leadership. And then also giving them that space to reflect. So whether that be through journaling, verbally, or both. And I even like the questions that you pose about what was that moment like when you were a leader? What did that feel like? What is leadership? What are your responsibilities as a leader? How did it make you feel if you were not the leader? How did it make you feel when someone else was the leader? I think all those questions are really, really important. In fact, Zach has an idea about us doing like a Camp Common Ground journal, and us like hiking every morning and doing like a journal where, you know, it could be that, let's say kids do this activity on a Monday, and
Yeah.
then like they get a chance to journal about it, and then we go into another leadership activity on a Tuesday, right? Like, I could totally see this fitting in. Yeah, no, this is, sorry, I'm just like really excited about this. I'm just kind of processing out loud. That's how I process things. So thank you so much. And I really love how specific your questions were. How do you think, like, I guess in the next, like after this activity, like let's say it is part of a sequence of activities, how do we get kids to, like, so there's an idea of like this general leadership, right? How do we get them to make the stretch between like me being a leader in general versus me being a leader of like integration, or leader of diversity, or leader of change, right? Like, how do we, like, what does that like pathway look like in terms of our programming in your mind? Or do you have any thoughts on that? Like how do we take them from like this leadership in general piece to getting to think about themselves as leaders of like change?
Yeah, that one's tough. I think that part of it, I think the only way to do that jump or transition would be to have done a lot of pre-work with them about their own identities so that they're comfortable identifying themselves. Be that through race or opting out of race, but being willing to vocalize that, like, well, I don't want to, you know, that's not a big part of my identity, or gender or whatever it is, so that they're comfortable speaking about their own identity. I see this piece, this activity being more about then kind of level 2. So if step 1 is like getting really, really comfortable talking about your own identity, then I think step 2 is where you start being able to kind of reach out to other people's identities in a way that doesn't feel intrusive, but in a way that feels really compassionate. So, you know, something like, so I'm just kind of, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's a big jump, but I think it has to be about people being able to recognize, and not 100% comfortable, because I don't think any of us are ever, I don't think we train our kids to be comfortable vocalizing difference. We kind of teach them to like internalize it. And, you know, don't look at them, you know, they're different, and don't stare, and don't point, and don't ask questions because it's rude. When what they really want to do is like, you know, ask questions and stare because they've never seen them before. And I think that the way we do that really starts this process of like shaming them against difference, so that now they're not comfortable even talking to the person who's different, and they're not comfortable looking that person in the eye or looking at them because they've been taught like, don't look at them, they're different. And so I think that, you know, it comes from a place of being able to recognize, this is who I am, and now I can recognize that we're different, but we're working together on this one small goal, and using that as a starting point. So I think the kids have to be comfortable, because, you know, if you bring a group of students that are of 8 different races together, and they're just meeting for the first time, and you say, hey, how does this apply to life? No one's going to say like, oh, we're all different races and we were able to do this together. If you've done the pre-work in terms of talking about identity and getting really comfortable about race, and race identity is kind of, someone's race identity is forefront in their mind, I think it's a lot easier to then make that transition, and talk about, and then you can start talking about different cultural factors, like, well, if the male was named as the leader, you know, I think if everyone's been kind of, what's the right word, like, done that, what is the right word? Like, if everyone's done the prerequisites, if everyone's like done those prerequisites of talking about and has that in their space, then I think people might be comfortable saying, you know, I was kind of disappointed that the leader was like the louder, like the male and like the popular one, you know? And I think that if you do enough to frame the conversation, and you do enough to get the kids comfortable talking about their own identities, then you can really start reaching some of those deeper levels about, well, now let's talk about someone else's identity, which I think is one of the most uncomfortable things to do.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because but I think it's also where I think people, that's where you get that kinship too. When you can talk to someone who's Latino about being a Latino and not feel like you're on needles.
Right.
You know? Or when you can talk to someone about like, what is it like to be gay without feeling like, you know, like they're mad at you or they're sad or you're making something worse. And so I think that's why it's important for people to be comfortable with their own identity so that they know what they're comfortable sharing and they have those boundaries.
I'm sorry, Maya, you went out for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. No, I just want to make sure because you went out for a minute. Did you get a chance to finish your thought?
Yeah, I did. I was just basically saying like I think people have to be comfortable with their own identities because then people can start to ask questions of them. And as long as you have a kind and forgiving and really brave space, then I think that's when you reach that deeper level of kinship.
I agree. I really like how you talked about kind of the pre-work that needs to happen around kids understanding who they are and what they choose to opt in and opt out of in terms of their identity. And then talking about the purpose of that is to get them to vocalize that there are differences and these differences inform you know, how we lead and how we live our lives, et cetera. And then getting to that point of conversation and having dialogue about it. I think that's really, really important. That's the heart of our camp. So basically those are actually all of my questions. I want to know, basically say like, did you have any other questions for me or Zach? And if I can't answer them, I'm happy to like get back to you once I have a chance to talk to Zach. You know, but any questions about the camp, about us, any of that?
The training on the 17th and 18th, is that something that happens in Oakland?
That is going to happen on the campsite. So it'll happen. So what will probably happen, it'll depend on who are like who's actually on staff. We will probably leave from Oakland or the surrounding area, and we'll probably just drive, you know, drive up to the campsite, and then we'll do our 2-day training there. And then some of us, not all of us, but some of us will come back to Oakland to pick up the kids on the 19th. Got
it. Okay. And then my last question. So I know from previous experience that this can be like really intense, and that caring for kids takes a lot of energy.
It does.
Staff, like, would we have time to like take breathing breaks and?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. So I'm so glad you asked that. So to be perfectly honest, so, you know, Zach and I are still working out like what the actual staff schedule will be like. But what we do know for sure is 2 of our commitments are paying staff better than the average counselor is paid for Bay Area camp. So that's why like $1,250 for 2 weeks. We like talked to a bunch of camp directors at other places, did research, and we were really committed to like budgeting so that it's more, because we just feel like the work that we're doing is super important. We feel like, you know, you have to put a dollar amount, you know, based on people's like energy, right, and time. Right. That's one thing. The second thing we're really committed to is giving people breaks and time to process and time to just relax and be away from kids, right? Okay. The reality is, you know, we all care about kids and we just need to like, it's intense and we need a break to be our best selves, right, for each other and them. So what that looks like is so one of the ways in terms of programming that looks like is, so, you know, at most camps, the camp director, so Zach and I are kind of like hands off, would be hands off, right? Which would mean the staff would be like the majority of the time, the kids would be with like their counselors. Whereas at our camp, Zach and I are actually going to be very hands-on. So like, you know, we're going to archery training and lifeguard training and stuff. And we plan to train staff in that, but we plan to be a part of that and leading quite a few of these activities in order to give staff that release. And that's kind of like an operations thing. So I hope that answers your question. I don't have like a complete like this is like the day, but there will definitely be like hours in each day where there are chunks of time where like you get a breather from kids.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then my last thing is not a question, but one of my good friends from college, she's because she's in school to become a teacher at Harvard.
Awesome.
I let her know about the camp and she may apply. And so I felt like it was fair to tell you ahead of time, because as you work out, like, because I know you guys have to find the best staff for your camp. So I felt like if you found out later we were friends, I didn't want that to be like awkward, like, oh, you should have told us. So just FYI, we do know each other. If she does submit an application.
Thank you. And what's her name?
Maria.
Maria, awesome. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really helpful. And if you know of anyone else, especially males, just, you know, males are harder to find in education in general, right? So if you know any males who are like, oh, they would be dope for this, we would definitely love to, you know, like check them out. We have some male applicants, but we're always looking for more. The other thing I want to make sure I fully answer your question from before. So the other thing that in terms of like breathings, like kind of downtime, I guess you could say. So there will be a lot of co-facilitating of activities. So like, just cause, you know, you're the camp counselor, you have your kids, like activities, like there will be another staff member there. So it won't be like, you're just by yourself, right? Which I think just helps with relieving people. It
does, yep. So you can go to the bathroom.
Exactly. So, yeah. So did you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
Now I have a question. So we're, you know, obviously interviewing other candidates, et cetera, but I wanted to ask you, is there like a particular date by which you would need to know a decision on our end in terms of your summer planning?
Probably, if I don't do this with y'all, I'm definitely going to teach summer school.
Okay.
And I probably need to apply to that after spring break. So my spring break starts at the end of next week.
Okay.
The 20th to 25th. So if I could know by the end of like that last week of March, that would be really helpful.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that. That's really, really helpful. So Zach and I will definitely be in touch before then and let you know. And again, like I really enjoy like talking to you and just getting to know you virtually. Obviously in person is better in general, but I just really got a chance to know. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your skills and all that. I learned a lot, and I'm actually taking notes, like notes from your video and what you were saying. So
thank you.
I just want to personally thank you, aside from the camp, just personally thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, Zach and I will be in touch, and if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Have a great evening. Bye.